Again, thank you for being here today. We're going to talk about effective teaching in a mixed mode format. My goal for today is to have 3 takeaways for you. 3 things that you can do that are pretty, some minor changes, somewhat minor changes that you can do to make your teaching in any format, but especially in this kind of shifting format, a little more effective and a little more inclusive. I want to show you, I've got a QR code here that you can scan. If you are, doing this from a format where you'd like to have the slides yourself, you can scan that. That leads you to all the resources from this workshop, including the slides. Eventually, we will also post the video there too as well. So feel free to share this with colleagues who you think might have gotten something from it, who weren't able to attend. Also, you can see the website down there. That takes you to that same page of resources. So you can either use the website or you can use the QR code. I did want to say that I think that, again, with Hurricane Ida, with the pandemic, that this mixed mode format is a little bit here to stay for trying to be inclusive and reach all students where they are. I know that since the evacuation, I've had 2 of my students, and I only teach 1 class of 24 students, and I've had 2 of my students who've tested positive since going back, due to the evacuation. So to be able to accommodate them and also maintain the health of my class, I'm teaching health psychology, for goodness sakes, I'm needing to find ways to accommodate them. So because I think that we're going to have more of these needs, this is why that's the focus of this workshop. I also want to say that Bart Everson is the producer of this workshop. So if you have tech difficulties, chat him. And then Jay Todd is the voice of the chat of this workshop. So please put anything in the chat. I actually don't look at the chat while I'm presenting, but he will, he'll let me know what's going on in the chat if I need to know. But also, we are a small group, so you can also kind of ask questions as we go along. And I've got some spaces in here for us to share. Okay, so I just giving credit where credit is due. Where I got a lot of my information about inclusivity and inclusive teaching is from this this online course through Columbia University called Inclusive Teaching, Supporting All Students in the College Classroom. You can see the creators of that course there. It's a wonderful course. It's free. And so I would highly recommend you check that out. I learned so much by taking this course a few years ago, and they've got a component now of their resources that deals with inclusive teaching in online environments. So just real quick to set us up, so we're using the same terminology. What is inclusion? I really like using this classic definition from Miller and Katz in 2002, and it's a sense of belonging, feeling respected, feeling valued for who you are, feeling a level of supportive energy and commitment from others so you can do your best. This is inclusion. And we all know as professionals times where we have felt included in an organization and times when we have not. So we can understand inclusion. But the important thing that I want to emphasize to Miller and Katz is they say it's not a focus on what you don't do. Inclusion, and when you're looking for being more inclusive, it's not a focus on what you don't do. Okay, so I don't laugh at homophobic jokes, or I don't call on someone in a class to speak for their entire race, right? These are good things not to do. But to really think about inclusion, the emphasis is on what actions do you do? What actions are you taking to make sure that every student in the class is feeling included? And so inclusive pedagogy is a method of teaching in which instructors and learners work together to create a supportive environment that gives each learner equal access to learning. And that's what I want to focus on with the 3 things we're going to talk about today. Giving each learner equal access to learning, because that means a lot right now, right? When they're dispersed, they've got different access to tech, they've got different access, different needs, different health needs. Like, this just means a lot right now, giving each learner equal access to learning. I'm not sure we could really fulfill, and think about this in light of our mission, right? I'm not sure we could really fulfill that on the first Tuesday we're back, but by the time we got back on the Thursday and then this week, we need to start striving to really fulfill this. Each learner has equal access. Now, again, they're not all going to take advantage of the equal access, I know, but It's our job to make sure that they have the opportunity and an equal opportunity. And there's a ton of data that shows that inclusive pedagogy is important for student success. Okay, well, that's not the focus here, so I'm not going to go into all the data, but trust me, there's a ton of data that for student success, inclusive pedagogy is really important. So the terminology. So then what is mixed mode instruction? Mixed mode instruction is when teachers offer their single course in multiple formats, right? And so we've been called upon, I imagine many of us to be, so far this semester, to be face-to-face, to be hybrid mixed mode, where we've got, some students attending in Zoom, some in person. I guess that's coming up. Actually, that's coming up. So we've been called on face-to-face, asynchronous, synchronous but recorded and making it asynchronous, or now potentially mixed mode moving forward. So this shift in these different modalities call for different pedagogies. And so how can we meet these pedagogical demands while maintaining our mental health and while giving every student an equal access to learn? So that's what my focus is going to be today as we talk about this. So let's start here. So I'm thinking of this in steps toward being able to do this the best. And of course, these aren't all the steps, but these are the steps we have time for today. Let's talk about kind of step one, starting here. And I'm calling this keep your eyes on the prize. All right. And this is backward course design. You've heard about this before from CAT. It's been around a long time. But this is a good time to just step back and recall the importance of this. As we are moving into next week and going forward in this semester, revisit your course goals, your learning objectives, your outcomes, whatever level your objectives for any single class session. Revisit those goals with a focus on what is essential and what is realistic. Okay, what is essential and what is realistic? You have limited capabilities, students have limited capabilities. We're working in kind of uncertain times. So what is the essential? Not your favorite lecture necessarily, right? I think about intro psych, and some of my favorite things to talk about are not necessarily the essential things students need to take from intro psych, but what's essential and what's realistic. Until you have your head around this, really moving forward is just trying to take exactly what you've been doing it and focus and forcing it into a format that's not going to be as effective. Okay, so revisit your goals of everything. What is essential and what is realistic? And then use backward design when creating any of your learning experiences. And there I'm talking about lectures, activities, class discussions. We'll get to all that, but your assignments and your assessments. Okay, use this. Why am I giving this? And does it clearly link back to what I think is essential and realistic? So in order to use backward design, you just ask yourself, what do you want students to know? Like really? And again, that's at every level. What do you want them to know in the grand scheme of things when they leave your class, but what do you want them to know at the end of this class session, or at the end of this activity, or at this end of the assignment? And then what evidences will you accept that they know it? Okay. So if you want them to know, I'm going to use my discipline if you don't mind, but if I'm teaching health psychology this semester. So I want them to know the importance of certain lifestyles on mental health. Okay, then what evidence am I going to accept, show that they know that? Is it going to be they have to be able to memorize it in a test? Is it going to have to be they can talk about and apply it in their own life? Is it going to be they can present it to others and make like a public service announcement? What's going to be my evidence that yep, they've matched that desired result? And then once I know what that is, then how do I teach that? How do I teach them this information in a way that they're going to be able then to provide the evidence to me to move forward? And this is backward design. You identify the desired result, you determine the acceptable evidence, and you plan learning experiences and instruction around that. again, whole nother workshop on backward design we could do, but many of us, when we began teaching, what we did is we got the textbook and then we made the syllabus around the textbook. This is the stuff I got to cover, and then I'm going to cover it. And we never really, we might have gotten handed down some course goals, but we never really thought about them. So this is a great time to just kind of pause and really look and be sure the information that's there and that what you're doing matches what you want students to get essentially and realistically. So I say that like as a beginning, because backward design is going to play a role in what I want to talk about right now, which is modular teaching. Okay, and this is something that's coming up in the pedagogical circles now as a way of dealing with mixed mode moving forward. Okay, module teaching. And there's a really good blog post here that just came out. You can see a few days ago from Oregon State's Center for Teaching and Learning. And it's in the resources page. It's linked there so you can read the whole blog post. It's really good. But what you do here is you start with your learning objectives. That's why I wanted to mention backward design to begin with. And then you look at each class session and you divide it into what are the units of each of your class session. What is the goal of each unit of activity? Now, if your class session is nothing but lecture, then let's talk, because I would encourage you to do some active learning. But then that'd be kind of one unit, right? But hopefully you're engaging students a bit more than that. But take a look at each class session, and then what is the goal of each unit of activity of the session? And they call these modules of a class session. And then you take those modules and you see how can that be, or are they mode flexible? Are they mode flexible? And that way you have a plan for each thing that you're doing. But you can only make a solid plan if you understand what your learning objectives are for that class session, which is why we started with backward design. Let me show you an example, then I'm going to give you time to think about this. So here's what I did when I was preparing this. I did for my health psych class just on, Thursday. This was last Thursday's. I looked at what I did, and then I divided this up. So my learning objective was at the end of this class, students would be able to describe the 8 therapeutic lifestyle changes and how they relate to health. This was just a broad overview of these TLCs, therapeutic lifestyle changes, the 8 TLCs. Just a broad overview day of these that we're going to unpack throughout the semester. So activity 1, I did a contemplative practice. Thank you, Bart Everson, for teaching us that over the years. And I did a check-in. And this was just to get them prepared to learn, right? Some of them were, on the phones, some of them were Zooming in, some of them hadn't gotten to be there on Tuesday. So it was just a way to get them to check in and be prepared to learn. Then I did a little mini lecture and slides on the TLCs. And the purpose of this was to deliver content, right? They'd already read about this, but now I want to expand on each of the TLCs. Then we did an activity 3, which was a small group discussion where I used breakout rooms. A small group discussion of the TLC they are strongest in, and this was just to build personal meaning of the course material and to get them to start to apply it. So I said, of these 8, which are you the strongest in? And then I created the breakout rooms. I got to choose where to go, and they just talked about what they did well in that TLC. And TLCs, by the way, are like physical activity, nutrition, spirituality, social support, etc. Activity 4 then was we came back and we had a full class discussion. This is to build rapport in the class, but to also address misconceptions, right? So as they were talking about things that they did, I could just kind of like listen in, have each one, be sure that there were no questions, okay, be sure that they got what I was hoping to from that discussion. Activity 5 was another small group discussion of the TLC they struggle with the most. So which of these is your weakness? And again, this is to build personal meaning and the application and to set up ultimately a assignment we're going to do with a 30-day challenge around the TLCs. Activity 6, again, was the full class discussion of that, build rapport, address misconceptions. And then activity 7 was a lecture wrap up to deliver content and set up for next class. Okay, so this is now not all my classes look like this. I'm not saying this was a perfect class. I'm in the same position of everybody else. It's just like teaching as best we can. But this is when I honestly looked at that class, this is what it looks like. So then when I took the modular teaching approach, what I did is I asked myself, are any of these mode flexible? So if I had students that weren't there, who needed to Zoom in because they're in quarantine, could I accommodate them? Or if I have students who are still don't have power when we start back next week, so I've got the class here and class there, how would I accommodate them? Like I was just thinking, and again, this is just some brainstorming about how could I do this. So I thought the contemplative practice, the check-in, I could do this. And again, there's a ton of technology here to choose from. So these aren't the right answers. These are just the answers of how I think I could have done this class in a mode flexible way. The contemplative practice and check-in, I think I could have done that via email or an announcement. Before you watch this video, here's what I want you to do. I want you to take 3 deep breaths. I want you to do this, try to get them to do that, because the purpose, again, wasn't instructional as much as prepare to learn. And I would have explained that in the email or the announcement. For the lecture and slides on the TLCs, I could have posted the video. I could have recorded it live, been in the classroom and recorded it live, or done it in advance, a little mini one, and posted it. Activity 3, the small group discussion of the TLC that they're strongest in. I could have done this with Jamboards or Padlets or discussion posts or breakout rooms. Again, it depends on what kind of mode flexibility I'm needing. If I've got students who can Zoom in, I could have put them in a breakout room. Well, the rest of the class is in groups, something like that. If there's people who don't have access to tech yet, I could have said, here's the discussion post. So when you do, place it there. Activity 4, full class discussion. Again, this could be a discussion post. It could be a voice thread. There are other technologies. I'm just telling you, these are the ones I'm familiar with too, as I was thinking about this class. Small group discussion, ditto. Full class discussion, ditto. The lecture wrap up, I could have posted the video or recorded live. All right. So this is, but what I think this does is when we start to think of our class sessions in a modular way, at least for me, it's a little relieving, okay, that I can look at it at this level instead of thinking, okay, I've got to be available to everyone in every format for a whole semester, how I'm going to do that, right? That's overwhelming. But if you can look at each class and say, okay, here are the learning objectives, and here's how I would make the plan to do that moving forward, then not only does it relieve at least my anxiety and make it more manageable, but it also then makes the and each one of these, again, linked back to my learning objective. Remember, I started with that. But it also makes the learning more inclusive, right? Students who are experiencing different tech issues or different health issues can now have access to the learning because I've given it some thought. So that's how it's linked back to inclusivity. Yes.
Question about number 3. If students are not there, how do you put them in small groups?
Oh, yes, thank you. That's a great question. So for activity 3, the small groups, and activity 5, the small groups, I think if students could not be there, I do have one student who is in Laplace, and she just said nothing is salvageable from their house. So she's, so let's say she can't get back next week and she can't log in, then I could create a discussion post for her, and I could ask some of her buddies from class, hey, buddies, you also had this as your weakest TLC. So will you chat with, when she posts, will you respond to that? And then I'll respond to that. So I think that's how I would deal with that, is a discussion post when she gets back and when she gets back online. And the reason why I wouldn't freak out about that part too much is think back to the previous slide where what my goal was here. My goal is to build meaning and application. So as long as she puts something out there for herself, for her meaning application, then that's been met, right? It's not content delivery. Good question. Thank you. So now what I want to do is I want you all to think about this before we move to the next thing. Oh, so here it is. Here's the little from the blog. Here's a little visual. So what you do for modular teaching, you identify each class period's learning objectives. backward design, learning objectives, review the lesson plan and break content into the modules and the activities, identify the goals for each module activity, determine how each activity can be made modality flexible. And again, this is a place where CAT can really help you. If you've got an activity and you're like, how could we do this? We've got tech experts who can help you with that. And then you replace activities that are modality limited. Let's say there's some that just, okay, this is not going to work in all modalities. Then you've got to find alternate activities for those students who need it so that you're being inclusive. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to consider this, and then we'll share. And I actually am going to set my timer, but I would like you to write this down or type this out, but consider an upcoming course session. It can be any of your courses. It can be your next course session, but something coming up, so it'd be useful. If you need to do a past one, that's fine too, but break it down into components like I did, and then think of a way you could make each component mode flexible. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to do this. I'm setting my timer. And then we'll share some ideas we came up with, because I don't want you just to have the kind of tech I came up with just because I know that. I'm going to mute myself while you do this. Here's your 2-minute warning. Okay, there we go. Thank you very much for doing that. If you don't use a timer when you do group work, I highly recommend it, because I was thinking, oh gosh, I bet it's 2-minute warning, and I think like 27 seconds had gone by. So I highly recommend it. Okay, we're small enough. I'm not going to put us in breakout rooms to share. Let's just share with each other. Who wants to share either something you came up with, a way that you could do at mixed mode, and kind of talk about that, or challenges you had coming up with it? Who would like to share?
And share my ideas.
Yes, please.
Well, next week, as I understand, we are going to go in class. I'm going to have in-person class. At the same time, if not all the students are going to be there, I will go further and post a PowerPoint, which I'm going to use in class on Blackspace and Brightspace. Also, during this week and last week, usually I record my presentations. And I'm going also to put that video, and I have video on Brightspace, the video. And also some questions, let's say if I'm going through my discussion in the class, I post some questions and I will introduce those questions in the PowerPoint. As for those who are not present, to have that and to know that at this point, we just discussed about this. Also, as you mentioned, I have 2 students in my class which are not present, don't have access to internet, don't have access, even don't have laptops in their parents' house, and the situation is with COVID is not so good, and so on. In this case, I have a question, how to reach them. They don't have access to internet. That means that the discussion board will not work right now for them. I left, they call me, telephone and message and voice message. I can discuss with them like during phone conversation, but this is really not sharing the content of 1 week class discussions, and I can, let's say, adjust the period for them to take assignments, quizzes, and so on. But how to reach them, this is my question. That's it.
Yes, thank you. And Ala, if you would mute yourself when you're not talking, we're just getting a little feedback earlier. But thank you. Thanks for that. Yeah, I would love to hear what other people are going to do for that as well. So there's a couple things about students who just can't access, and we have to be realistic. Some of them cannot access it, right? especially if they're in a place where, where they've got damage, they can't access it. One thing is I'm going to encourage my students to come to campus if they can. If they can't because their cars got flooded. I had students who their whole family's car got flooded, like everybody in the family's car. My Laplace student also, like she had her books in the car. Like, this is some real issues. So for the class discussion part, that is really important. In my class, she can hear it, right, recorded. That's one option. Is I could set up one-to-ones with her and kind of try to give her the best access I could. I'm planning on still creating some discussion boards, especially for her, and get other people to kind of help and pitch in with that while I'm discussing with her. Well, for when she has access, so I'm not going to have late penalties or anything like this. I'm hoping she will be stable and caught up by the first exam. The other thing I'm thinking about doing is really our next class meeting is just getting buddies in the class, like creating class groups who set up, what do they call them, students, what do they call them, group meets, group something's on their phone where they can create little groups. And, and that way, even in class, I'm going to encourage, because one thing, if you encourage students to use their tech for educational purposes, they actually use their tech for educational purposes and not just scroll during your class. So I'm going to encourage them, if their buddy isn't there, chat with them about what's going on in class, and here's what we're doing now, and here's what we're discussing, and just try to build that kind of, help. I'm going to have students help me cover this, because exactly what you say, I can't do effective class discussion for a whole week, just myself and one other person. How would somebody else answer all this question though? What's your plans? Those are just mine, but what are your plans? Somebody else.
Well, I can speak. You can look at me now also. Well, I'm teaching online on Zoom this semester, and I found that some of my students couldn't even do that. But even before I started this class, one of my class, I'm thinking of my poetry workshop, is divided into groups of 3 or 4. And so when we have a prompter workshop, all the directions are on Brightspace, and I'm available to students by email also, so they can email me any questions if they can't get on Zoom when I actually, sort of present the poem that we're going to write that week. So they have done that. Students who cannot join, they've emailed me, and they also have the opportunity to email their group members. They have their emails. They have the emails of the whole class. What I like to do is I like to have them do bios, 10-line bios and photos at the beginning of the semester, and I post that with their email on Brightspace. So they have everybody's email in the class, only Zula emails, and then I put them into groups of 3 and 4, and they can work with each other. Then when we come to class, the group whose poem, the person whose poem we're talking about is in charge of beginning the discussion. And if the person who was in that group but is not there, I've had the person email the group members and present it, and then they can present his or her views to the class. So that way, the person is not left out. But also, I've been able to tape the session, especially for that student, and to post it on YouTube. And I'm not going to talk about that because Bart knows how upset I am about this, because now I don't know what's going to happen to all the material that I put on YouTube. And I hope that CAT maybe can help us to move this, to help us, to get ITC to move this to our future personal YouTube, because they're going to move from Google. And so that's going to create a massive problem for me. I'm sure I'm not the only one. But anyway, then in class we come together and we respond together to the poem. And I taped the class workshop for the students because, you know, it's not just a workshop. I add material, teaching stuff, you know, that they need to know in every class. And then, you know, email everybody to see where they can find this. And then students who are not in class who have questions can email me with questions.
Thank you so much, Brianna. I will follow up on that email. Bart did send me that email, so I'll follow up with you on that. But I love the idea about the bios. Like, think about that, and especially I'm gonna use that, especially if you are trying to build these buddies system like I am in my class. Then having the bios, that's a really good idea. So I'm gonna use that one. I'm going to move us forward to because we've got two other little things I want to cover. So I'm sorry we didn't get to everybody's, but I hope that thinking about your class as modular will be helpful in kind of moving forward as you're doing it. And we had two good examples from Ala and from Biljana about how they have these different modules and then what they're doing to kind of meet students' needs, because that's what we're going to have to do. And I'm afraid that's what we're going to be doing for the foreseeable future. And not afraid, it's what we should be doing, but it's a shift. It's a shift from back pre-2020 when it's like, well, if you don't come to class, then you have to figure out a way to make it up, right? The expectations on us are different. And I think because we want to serve our mission of our university, it's really important to engage that call. So the next step. So the first step is think about modular teaching with a backward design in mind. The next step I would really encourage you all to do is to set explicit student expectations, especially in these shifting times, these uncertain times. Be super explicit. Now, the pushback sometimes to be explicit about student expectations is, well, that is handholding. It's handholding. I'm not talking about doing the work for them. I'm talking about being explicit about what's expected of you. And I always like to use the analogy here of us as faculty members who are employed. I want to know what the expectations are of my employment. How many teaching classes am I supposed to teach? How much do they meet? What am I supposed to do about this? And when the university is vague about some things, we get really frustrated, right? Frustrated, like, well, I don't understand what's expected of me. Okay, so think about this happens to us. Students in our classrooms, they also want to know what is expected. And it's not just that they are needy or lazy, or, we all want to know the expectations of how we can succeed. And so again, this is a whole another workshop, and we've done this, and Jay has blown the horn of transparency in teaching and learning. In learning and teaching, actually, it's reversed here. It's tilt, transparency in learning and teaching. If you've come to CAT workshops, you have heard us talk about this, but this is, it's kind of a decade old or so now, but this really changes students' experiences and is helpful for students. Transparency in learning and teaching, these methods just explicitly, that's the word, explicitly focus on the how and why students are learning course content in particular ways. Explicitly telling about what your assignments are trying to achieve and what they can do to succeed. Being explicit with this. Now, you, especially in the upper level classes, you can kind of scaffold this over time, but this is being explicit in your teaching. And Marianne Winklemas was the kind of big name behind this and the founder of this. And she has a ton of data from a ton of universities now with many, many undergraduate samples, and transparent methods benefit students across the board, but especially students who are unfamiliar with college. So our first generation students, underrepresented students, these students benefit so much. She did one study where all she did was train faculty to do 2 assignments using this transparent method, and the retention rates and the pass rates and all the good grade rates for African Americans went up like substantially, went up substantially. Yeah, transparency in teaching and learning. It's really important stuff, and especially important with our student population and our mission, and with our new QEP initiative we've got focusing on first generation college students at Xavier. So there, the website, and again, you can find this on the resource page for this workshop, tilthighered.com. They've got transparent assignment templates. So like, here's just a template that you can plug and chug your stuff in here. I'm not going to read you this template. I just want you to know it exists, and you can find it at the resource page. Basically, the transparent assignment template says you should cover the purpose. What's the purpose of this assignment? And again, this is a real backwards design, because we have to know what the purpose is. And man, the first time I moved, and I moved my classes to transparent assignments one at a time, just to let you know, like, I didn't overwhelm myself. I did it one class at a time. And the first time I did this, I really changed a lot of my assignments, because when I really looked at the purpose, well, the purpose was I've been doing it for a really long time and it's a good assignment, but the purpose wasn't really linked back to something, a student learning outcome or anything. And then the task, what's the task? What to do, how to do it, right? What exactly should they do? How do they get started? Students never done something in poetry critique before. How would they know how to do this, right? So what to do, how to get started. And then criteria. What does excellence look like? What does what is the criteria for success? So they can see, are they meeting this or not, and not just guessing, what do we want? This is transparency. And here I'm just going to show you, this is just an example from my research methods course that I moved. It used to be like a couple of paragraphs that just kind of talked about, do this annotated reference list, and now I've followed that template, right? And I've got the purpose, I've got the skills they're going to get, the knowledge, I've got the tasks, this is exactly what you should do. I've got the technical, I've divided mine, because it's a research methods class, into content guidelines and technical guidelines. And then I've got the rubric, so they can grade it before they turn it in. And early in the semester in my advanced research class, because I want to do some scaffolding, I have them grade it, like, grade this before you turn it in. And some of them are stunned, like, I didn't do this part. And I'm like, yeah, well, it was there the whole time. Okay, but again, everybody, regardless of their background knowledge with college, has equal access to learning if you use transparent assignments. So I really encourage you, again, you can just one assignment at a time, one class at a time, but I really encourage you to consider this. And remember, the Winklemas data, they only did 2 transparent assignments in that class, and it made a difference in academic achievement, also in a sense of belonging. Made a big difference. I also use transparent format even in my syllabus. So this is just a cut and paste from my syllabus for my health sci class. We do reading guides, and so this isn't a big like template like before, but it's just, again, even in the syllabus. So on day 1, they can look and they can say, okay, here's the purpose, here's the task you're going to do, and here's the due dates. And then of course on Brightspace, then I provide more of that template for assignments. But this is even in my syllabus now. I follow this. tilthighered.com. Check it out. All right, I'm keeping my eye on the time here. So one more I want to present, and this is, so we've got thinking about it as modular. Think about it being as transparent as can be, especially if students are going to be going back and forth between different modes. Things can get confusing, and yours is just one class of many classes for them. But also design all course elements for accessibility. Okay, now Brightspace is set up for accessibility, so it's got built-in accessibility features, which is one of the benefits of this learning management system. But there are other things that you can do, and you can think about it. I'm encouraging you to go, and again, this is on the resource page as well, but I'm encouraging you to go to our blog. If you have not subscribed to it, subscribe to it now. We do a nice job of presenting some accessibility information for you. And then also go back to your Learn Everywhere Zula course. I know some of you on here might not have been in the course, and if you are interested in learning more about this, contact me. But in the Learn Everywhere Zula course, which you still have access to, Bart did a really nice module on accessibility and usability. Right, so you can go there. It's got a ton of resources under Learn More. It's got a ton of Brightspace examples about this. but just attend to this, attend to it in terms of any student accommodations that need to be made, or even just the usability, functionality, how readable is your font and your colors and these kind of things. There's a lot of good tips there, okay, for usability. So minor changes you can make to make your mixed mode course. And again, I'm thinking we're not assigned mixed mode courses right now, but I'm thinking we're all going to be living them for a little bit. Minor changes you can make to make your mixed mode course more inclusive. And remember, we're thinking about inclusivity in terms of every learner has equal access to the learning opportunities. So after you reflect on what is essential and realistic for your course, make a plan using modular teaching. I think that really can help narrow things down. Set clear expectations using transparent assignments. All it is a format. All it is taking your assignments now and putting it in a new format. And then attend to accessibility issues. And any of these, we in CAT can help you as you're working through it. We can help you bounce ideas off. We can, we can brainstorm with you, because we don't know your content, but we have thought a lot about these topics. So we are happy and we're here to help. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing. We only have a few more minutes, but I'm going to stop sharing and see what questions you might have, or what would you share that you've done that's really been successful for you?
Mark was just asking in the chat about places to find transparent assignments or examples, I guess, Mark.
Yes, the Tilt's website's got examples. They've got a little tab that says resources and samples, resources and examples, something like that, and they've got a ton of examples. Also, if you go to the wiki, so that QR code, or that maybe somebody would put it in the chat, put the link from the beginning in the chat. I think it's Bart, put the slash is mixed mode. If you'll put that in the chat, yes. I'd appreciate that. I think Jay put that page together, and it's got some nice examples there too as well.
I just wanted to say this, that my my advisee wanted to change her mode of going to classes, because she can't do it in person anymore this semester. And so, I mean, that can happen as well. And so, if that happens to you, I've sent her to the dean, and I think they're going to have to allow these students to be able to do that this semester, because of the situation.
Yeah.
She can't do it from on campus.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, there are going to be students who just can't do it from campus. My guess is there's going to be families who say, we are getting rained on by Nicholas right now. I'm looking out my window. It's raining pretty hard. They're going to say, I'm not sending my student back just to fly back again before hurricane season. So I think that this is just going to be a little bit where we are in the future of higher ed. What an exciting time. How's that? How's that for a reframe? It's 10:50. I'm ready to hang out for a bit if anybody has questions or anybody else wants to share, but I also want to be respectful of your time. I really appreciate you all being here today. Please do let your colleagues know that this recording will be there, because I think it's some good information that a lot of people could use, I hope. Thanks, everybody. If you have any other questions or anything, I'll hang out. Otherwise, have a wonderful day. Stay dry. I hope to see you on campus next week. Okay. Kat wants to get you lunch at some point.